Alright guys, we're on our Storyworks lesson, and the lesson today is on the Newsies, this play, which you will need to read. Remember, the characteristics of a play is that we have a set of characters, a narrator, someone who's telling the story, and then there are certain people with certain parts. These are the parts that the characters read. And then there are different scenes in a play, or sometimes there are different acts in a play, and sometimes there are stage directions. That's what I'm looking for. Oh, here, like Boots is shouting. So stage directions are in parentheses, and they tell you how to act or what to do. Okay, so I'm not going to read the Newsies to you exactly, but I am going to model how we're going to go back to the story to find answers to do this activity, which is what happens to the price the Newsies pay for papers during the war. Okay, so during the war, there were kids, and so kids would have to pay for the papers, and a lot of times they were poor and sometimes even homeless, okay? And these kids would work day and night to just feed themselves so that they could buy some food. Okay, so you buy 2 newspapers for a penny, but then sell them for a penny apiece. So you double your money. Boots goes to the window. How many? Boots, I'll take 100. Boots hands over 50 cents. Sorry, kid. Price for 100 papers is now 60 cents. So the price went up during the war. So no longer do they get double their money. Now it costs 60 cents. I won't earn as much, but these papers will sell like hotcakes. Look at the headlines. America declares war. Give me 200. Annie and Rosie buy some too. Okay. So bet these will be easy to sell. How do you know? Because the news is good. Hot off the press, America at war, House of War, good news. It's good news for us. Boring news doesn't sell papers. Get your paper here, war in Spain. Okay, in just a few minutes, Boots sells a dozen papers. All right, so right now it's seeming like they're doing good, right? They're selling their papers. Okay, but then the war ends. There's no more war. People don't care about catching up with the big news, right? And so they have paper left over. And if they have papers left over, they're going to lose money. But the price of the papers went up. The paper owner said they would drop the price once the war was over, but then they didn't. And so, okay, let's go back here to our, what happened to the price Newsies paid for the paper during the war? The price of the papers went up because the news was good. It was good news, right? What happens to the price the Newsies pay for paper after the war? The price was supposed to drop, but it did not drop, and Newsies were not making as much money because the papers didn't sell. Okay. Are the Newsies being treated fairly? Explain your answer. No. The Newsies were having to pay more for papers when people were not buying as many. So the demand for the papers had gone down. Okay. Oops, something I spelled something. We're not buying. Except. All right. So what does Sully convince the Newsies to do? So let's go back. Okay, the next morning. Sully speaks to the crowd. The newspaper owners said they would drop the price once the war was over. Crowd, yeah. Did they? No. The time has come to take a stand. We want to strike. Strike, strike, strike. Stick together. Nobody sells papers. If you see anyone selling papers, tear the papers up. So they decided to stick together and to go on strike. A few hours later, someone else, Rose looks for Annie. Annie was out all night trying to sell her paper. Annie begins to cry. I have 32 left. There's good news, Annie. We're going on strike. We're going to stop selling papers? She's like, how am I going to eat? Right, we'll force the newspapers owners to lower our price back to 50 cents. I won't earn anything. Sometimes you have to sacrifice a little up front to get more later. So it was probably really scary because look, they weren't eating. Look at them huddled in the corner. They didn't have food. This was really a hard time for kids in America. They don't even have shoes on. That's sad to me, that picture. Okay, let's look at the other pictures. So there's people that are packed all over the place in New York City. Streets were always crowded and filthy, it says. Okay, here's a picture of the millions of children who went to work to earn money to support their families. They sold newspapers, flowers, candy on the street. Others took dangerous jobs in factories or mines. So children went to work. Man, they're young. They're like your all's age, guys. All right, let's go back down here. Hearst was one of the most powerful men in New York. The Journal, that's the newspaper. What's the story? The Newsies strike is hitting us hard. We're not selling as many papers. No, our sales have dropped. I've worked too hard to let this paper be ruined by a bunch of brats. Annie and Rosie pass out flyers. Is that your stomach growling? When was the last time you ate? Annie shrugs. Rose hands out another flyer. Reading. Please don't buy the World or Journal newspapers. What is this? We're on strike. The man crumples it up. This will never work. A factory worker passes by and gives them each a penny. Stay strong, kids. Thank you. Boots runs up excited. All the Newsies have started a protest. Come on. There's 1,000 children crammed onto the bridge. Traffic is at a standstill. Newsies on strike. We demand a fair deal. A wagon carrying papers tries to get through the crowd. Newsies swarm the wagon like ants on a hot dog. Get those papers! The protesters overturn the wagon. They throw the papers over the side of the bridge, and the driver runs off. You tell Mr. Hearst that we ain't giving up. Hearst pulls up. Listen up, I'm offering a compromise. The papers will cost the same, but if you go back to work, I'll buy every paper that you don't sell. The children murmur to one another. Is that a good deal? Sure it is. When you can't sell your papers, you'll get your money back. Annie calls out. I like it. Me too. We'll take it. Woohoo! Oh, look. We want to go to school. Look at their signs. We are protected by a tariff. More schools, less hospital. Let's have justice. Look at these kids. Newsies were a part of the large change in America. Around that time, all kinds of workers, including many kids, began to demand better treatment from their bosses. Selling paper saved my family from homelessness. I got to go to school. You're lucky. I had to work at the docks. Life was still hard. But the strike gave us power. It showed us the rights we had. Okay. What does Sully convince the Newsies to do? Go on strike from selling papers to demand fair treatment. What does Rosie explain to Annie about what they're doing? Rosie says that they have to stay strong now, so there is a payoff later. Let me go back and just double check. Strong. I didn't put the G on it. Okay. Let's go here. Stay. I remember where she said that. Let's find it. Sometimes you have to sacrifice a little up front to get more later. How are the Newsies being brave? Because they are taking a risk of starving. They don't have any money. Annie was stomach growling. She didn't even know when she ate last. And they are refusing to do their job even though they don't have any money. Okay. What other actions do the Newsies try or take to make their voices heard? What will happen to newspaper sales? What does William Randolph-Hearst agree to do? How does the strike turn out for the Newsies? Okay. The Newsies made signs. They passed out flyers. They blocked the streets. They threw newspapers into the river. They threw newspapers into the river. Okay, what happens to the newspaper sales? Okay, the newspaper, oh, come on. Let me click. Didn't look like there's a text box there. I'm going to add one. If there's not one on yours, you might have to add one. The newspaper sales drop. So the newspaper is not making money either, right? So William Randolph, the owner of the paper, decides he will buy back any papers the Newsies don't sell. That way they don't lose their money. Okay, how does the strike turn out for the Newsies? Let's go look. Alright, so we're down here. Oops, sorry. Okay, epilogue. Selling papers saved my family from homelessness. I got to go to school. You're lucky I had to work at the docks. Life was still hard, but the strike gave us power and showed us that we had rights, even though we were just kids. Back then, many children throughout the U.S. worked in unsafe jobs for little pay. Almost 40 years later, a law was passed to help them. Today, most kids can't work until they're 14 years old and not more than 18 hours during a school week, and all children have the right to an education. Okay. Let's see. New laws were passed so that kids can't work until they're 14 and only 18 hours. They can only work 18 hours a week during school. Okay? So, kids can't work until they're 14. They can only work 18 hours a week during school. Okay? Alright. What did the Newsies learn? The Newsies learned to stick together. And they also stick together to make their voices heard. Right? Because they had to work together. That gave us power. It showed them they had rights. The Newsies also learned that they had rights and should not be treated unfairly. Alright, what lesson did you learn from reading about the Newsies? And I'll let you put that in there, whatever it is that you learned. You all did a great job finding the theme. Thanks, guys.